Hey guys and girls, welcome back to the latest edition of What We've Been Watching Thingy, our monthly update on what we've been watching in the world of film and TV. Now, since we've just had the spooky season Halloween, I guess you could say this is a spooky season special, an October special. And what better woman to have on for that sort of show than Lady Shasha herself from the What Did I Just Watch channel. Lady Shasha, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for doing this. So, in case you've not seen one of these episodes before, the way we do it is we sort of run through what we've been watching for the last month, in this case for October. So we'll be first of all covering the movies we watched, a lot of them horror because of it being October, but we'll also be talking about the TV shows we've been watching for the last month as well. We encourage you guys also to let us know what you've been watching in the comments with movies, what we've been watching for the last month. So Lady Shasha, if you want to mention your first one.
For October, the first movie I watched was Saw 10. And I was kind of excited about that because I feel like, I have a special memory about the first Saw movie. Was actually the last movie I watched with my grandfather before he passed away. And he really enjoyed it. I remember when the reveal happened, I won't spoil it, at the end, he said, and I've never, this is a veteran, this is a Korean War veteran. I've never seen him have a reaction of surprise, to be shocked by anything. And he was actually shocked by that. And he said, "That's a dang good movie." So I
should go on the poster.
Yeah. I watched all the Saw movies. I watched the Chris Rock Saw spinoff, which is Spiral. It was surprisingly better than I thought it was going to be. Okay. And so this last Saw actually takes place in between the first and the second Saw. So I don't know whether you would call that a sequel, a requel, or what would you call that, since it doesn't take place in a chronological order.
Yeah, it's quite hard to sum up what that is, I would say. I'm sure there is a word because they come up with a title for every sort of franchise entry. Okay, but Saw X, the latest, you quite like it then?
Yeah, I was at first. I said to myself, well, these Saw traps are not very impressive. But then I had to check myself and thought, is it that the traps aren't impressive, or am I desensitized because we've been seeing these traps, through 10 movies? So maybe to a person who hasn't seen the previous Saws, the traps are still as visceral. But to me, maybe I'm just numb because I've watched so much Saw. So I'm not sure.
It could be so I've not seen this one yet. I've seen a few of the Saw movies, including the first one when it was at the cinema originally. So that's crazy to think that's nearly 20 years ago now, which is insane. But I'm not a fan of the franchise overall because I quite like that original movie.
Yes.
But the franchise after that is not really my sort of thing. But people keep saying this one is better, like it's one of the better Saw movies. So
I would agree. I think it's better than maybe the last three in the line. Okay. But I do find myself never rewatching the sequels, but only rewatching the original Saw.
Oh, come on, that franchise sucks. It's run out of steam. And then you'll just get people on the internet all raving about another sequel, and it's oh damn it, I suppose I might have to give it a watch sometime then. So,
and then sometimes I wonder if it's also due to age, because I mean we're a little bit older, so we might not have the nostalgia that someone who maybe they first saw their first Saw movie when they were 8, and it's like nostalgia to them. It's like I grew up on these movies.
Those crazy kids. So okay, I'll definitely have it on the watch list. I'll probably wait for streaming, but I'll keep it sort of on the burner to take a look at some point. My first watch of October was a first time watch for me, so it's one I caught up with because I didn't see it when it was at the cinema, and that is the 2019 Child's Play movie. I'm guessing you've seen this with Mark Hamill. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I heard a lot of bad things about it, people like trashing it, and I've got to say, I quite enjoyed it. Like, it baffles me what the negative reaction was. And I can only think the negative reaction was because they had so much, like, connected to the original movies and that franchise, then they just wanted another Chucky movie like that. And I think it definitely had elements of those older Chucky movies, but it definitely did its own thing as well. So this is, in case you don't know, this is like an AI sort of twist on the Chucky story, where you get quite a familiar Chucky style plot, but the difference is it's an AI generated like doll, which kind of goes wrong. So it's sort of tapping into similar things which Megan did this with, that kind of thing. But you also have the setup of like the original Child's Play movie, where you do have a single parent played by Aubrey Plaza and her son, and it's sort of set in an apartment complex, and the drama of the movie is him getting this toy and things slowly going wrong. And eventually, the way it transpires is him and a group of friends have to team up to try and take it down. But yeah, I enjoyed it for the most part. Like, I thought there was some good, like, dark humor in it. The kid was good. I think the casting of the kids were good, and Audrey Plaza was great as the mum. You got really Mark Hamill channeling his like inner Joker as he in Batman, like in the lead, and or as the doll, and he was great. And yeah, I just think if you're gonna like bring this sort of story back and just do like, I guess, like a soft reboot type thing, then I think you have to come up with a twist on it. And that's what they did. And I think it worked. Like, I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, but it's like I had a fun time watching it. And once the horror plot kicked in, I thought it was quite a fun movie. So yeah, I'd recommend giving it a shot if people haven't seen it. That's the 2019 Child's Play.
I agree.
You're a fan?
Yeah, I when I reviewed it, I actually talked a little bit about there were some elements they put in there that come from real life, and I put the articles from the Apple factory in I'm not sure if it's Beijing, but it's somewhere in China. What some of the disgruntled workers were doing in the Apple factory, and how they might have taken creative license and maybe a little bit of inspiration from that to put into this. I did like the modernization of the Chucky doll, because a lot of toys now are AI based. So I just think there was a lot of nostalgia and a certain, and, you know, I love Chucky. You see, I'm a number one Child's Play fan. So when I first saw the trailer, I wasn't impressed. I was like, I don't like how the doll looks. But then when I saw the movie, I liked the concepts in it. I liked the acting. I liked the bit of gore they put in there. I thought it was solid.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I think the ending was a little bit messy, but like, generally speaking, I got into the satire, the themes that it was doing.
The commercials.
The commercials were hilarious, and I enjoyed the characters. You know, I really rooted for the mother and the son character. I thought they had quite a nice relationship.
This documentary called The Wild Whites of West Virginia.
Okay.
And it's about this family that is very, very, well, as they're described, wild. And they live in West Virginia, which for international viewers is a place in the United States where they have a unique culture that was based around coal mining. For many, many generations, it was based around coal mining. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that live there now are in like desperate poverty, because when they shut down the coal mines, they didn't open other places for them to work at. So you have several generations of people that work the coal mines. So that's what they know how to do. They haven't been trained to do anything else, and they're in kind of a desperate situation. And I found out from watching a different documentary on YouTube that even when I worked in the coal mines, they weren't paid in money. They were paid in government vouchers that they could only use in government stores. So they, even if they wanted to leave town, they couldn't really go anywhere because they didn't have actual cash. They only had the minor vouchers that could only be used in that town. So it's almost like a form of modern slavery, to be fair. And so this family, living under those conditions, have unfortunately resorted to being involved in drugs and fighting, and they're basically like the people you would see on Jerry Springer, but you see their home life. And it's so wild. It's like they're endearing on one side because you can see what pain that they've gone through, but on the other side, they do the craziest things. And the documentary just documents what they do. Like, it's just, like I said, and their last name is White. That's why they're called the Wild, and it's the Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And it was produced by Johnny Knoxville, who did Jackass.
And
he's from Tennessee.
See that coming.
Yeah,
because he's local.
Yeah, okay. It's very, very interesting. It's very eye-opening to see the part of America that isn't shown a lot in the media. A lot of our U.S. TV programming would make it seem like everyone in the U.S. is very wealthy, because that's what a lot of programming focuses on. Whether it's the what do you call them? The soap operas. I don't watch those. All the housewife shows. They're all very rich women that have nothing to do but argue with each other. There's a lot of that. It's not very frequent that we see the other side of it. Like the last time in media they showed the other side of that was back in the 80s, when you had like Married with Children, and Roseanne showed like that's more realistic America than the idealized wealthy American.
Yeah, I can believe it.
But I definitely recommend watching the documentary. It was free. What service did I watch it on? It was on an app. I can tell you. I'll look it up real quick. It's on Fossum was the name of the app, for free. Okay. And there's also an app called Free TV Club that I didn't know about. So people can see. And it's on Canopy, which is our library app in this area.
Okay.
And of course,
the chances are, if you're in the UK, you can find it somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a few options to find it. Okay. Yeah. That does sound interesting. I think that I'll add that to the list. Maybe that sounds like one that may be worth a look. Okay. So my next pick is, well, it's 3 films, and this is because my first stream of the month for October, I sort of watched all 3 Reanimator movies. So I did the trilogy on stream, which was exciting. So I've seen the first 2 before, but not the third one. The third one, Beyond Reanimator, was the first time watch. And yeah, I would say 2 of the 3 are good. Like the original movie, which I'm sure I'll do one day on the channel with Rachel, is a bit of a classic, a bit of a cult body horror style classic. Really entertaining, bad taste style movie. And Barbara Crampton is absolutely iconic in it as the Scream Queen. It's the film that gave her big sort of break. And very entertaining, fun cult movie with awesome practical effects as well, and a nice riff on the classic Psycho theme as well. It's always great. And so I would say, I don't know what you feel about the sequels, but the first sequel I do enjoy quite a bit. Like, it's definitely not as good as the original, but I think there's still a lot of fun moments. You've still got Herbert West on great form. It's a weird one because it's the one that opens in like somewhere in the jungle or something, isn't it? Like Bolivia or somewhere like that. And when you get that opening, I thought, oh, okay, what sort of movie is this going to be? I mean, how are they going to turn it into like a Reanimator movie? But yeah, when the plot kicks in, it's a really good sequel, which if you like the first film, you should enjoy the sequel. Whereas Beyond Reanimator, I thought was rubbish. It at times it didn't even feel like a Reanimator movie. It's the one that's set in the prison.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's such a random setting for like a Reanimator movie, and it was just really dull to sit through. Like, it just wasn't entertaining enough, or had enough of like the Reanimator style moments. Like the end of the movie does go kind of crazy. So the end of the movie is probably the highlight. But overall, it's definitely the weaker of the three. So
It's been a very long time since I've seen Bride of Reanimator. I've rewatched Reanimator like probably every year. I rewatch Reanimator. I do notice that Bride of Reanimator is now available on Shudder, so I have to check it out again. But Reanimator is one of the movies that made me super interested in. You can't hear that in the background, can you? There's music. I don't know if you can.
Little bit, but don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. It's coming from the living room, and they're not gonna turn it down for me. It's a holiday weekend, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, Reanimator is one of the movies that really got me into gore. It's like my top 3. I remember seeing them in high school. It's a perfect age to see these. I rented them, and I was about 14, so it's like the perfect age to watch these movies. It was Reanimator, Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead. I think it's the one where the guy kills the zombies with the lawnmower.
I know the one. It's Peter Jackson, isn't it?
Yes, Peter Jackson.
That's a fun one. Yeah, I enjoy.
Yeah, that. those movies got me into gore. I was like, this person is getting choked with someone else's intestines. I love this. How do I see more of this?
How can you go wrong?
Yeah. And even in the dialogue too, when he was arguing with his roommate, and he's like, "When were you going to tell me about the cat? Oh, should I leave a note? Cat dead details at 5."
Yeah, insane. It always freaks me out when you have a cat being reanimated. That is, for whatever reason, that is one of the most unsettling things you can ever see on screen, I think. Bride is a fun sequel. Beyond, as I said, but I guess to complete the trilogy, you've got to watch it, really. But yeah, 2 out of 3 is pretty good.
I've heard that there's an adjacent TV show, but I don't know what platform it's on. It's called Miskatonic University, I think.
Okay, I think I heard something about that, so maybe keep an eye out for it. And also, it's a fun little fact I like to bring out. But if you remember, in the first movie, like the start of the movie, the professor's name is Hans Gruber. So it's another Hans Gruber from the 80s, a little bit before Die Hard came out. I kind of love that somehow.
Might as well warn everyone, I watched Pet Sematary Bloodlines.
Okay.
It's not good. It's so not good.
That's right. Yeah.
It's very bad. It's boring. It's all the bad things. Like it's giving money grab. Like, okay, we had access to this intellectual property, so we'll just use it, but they did nothing with it. And it's really a shame, because you have the blueprint. It's in the book. You could have just written about what actually happened when Judd tells his backstory and about his wife, and that's all you had to do was just do what was in the book. It's not very good. No. Okay. I did not enjoy that one. Do not recommend.
Okay, well, obviously it's Paramount Plus, isn't it? So if you want to knock yourself out, it's easy to watch. But I hear nothing but bad things, so I'm not surprised. And then you had that opinion as well. So okay, fair enough. So my next film that I watched was the 91 Pit and the Pendulum, which is got a bunch of people in it, including Herbert West himself from Reanimator. I forget the actor's name now, but
oh god, you just said it too. Jeffrey Combs.
That's it, Jeffrey Combs, who is amazing, and also Lance Henriksen is in it. A bunch of people, and it's one of those, because I've also seen the Vincent Price version, the Roger Corman from the 60s, which is a pretty fun movie as well. Like, I do enjoy the Corman versions of both stories. And this is like the complete opposite. This is complete pantomime, like actors dressing up, period detail, but like really hammy and like a sort of a horror pantomime almost. And you've got a lot of fun character actors who are just like sort of sending themselves up and like having a whale all the time. I think it does drag a little bit at times, and I would probably say I prefer the 60s film to this one, but there's no doubt, just as a wacky like cult movie, like just I don't know, almost making fun of like really serious period style dramas. It definitely has some charm, this one. So yeah, it's worth a shot. It's worth ticking that box once again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's free on YouTube, and
Oh, great.
so that's nice and easy. Because of like the new Netflix version of 4 of the House of Usher,
Mm-hmm.
and me and Rachel also did a review for the 60s Pit in the Pendulum. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was in a bit of a Poe mood,
Mm-hmm.
for this month. So I thought I'd check that one out as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I've been feeling the same way after watching that show. I wanted to watch. There's several versions of the Fall of the House of Usher, and I don't know which one to start with.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm similar because I've seen some of the Corman ones, but that is one I haven't seen. And I always hear good things about it.
Mm-hmm. This is Believer, which I recorded a review for, but I still haven't edited it. I don't know why I keep procrastinating editing it. It's the type of movie that's simultaneously good and bad. And I say that because if you've never seen The Exorcist before and you didn't know if you the title of this, you would think, oh, this is a decent, exorcism type movie. It's fun enough. But if you have seen The Exorcist, you automatically, unfortunately, compare it in your mind. And because The Exorcist is such a phenomenally made film, and David Gordon Green that did this one, he kind of, it's like a Cliff Notes version. Like he took a lot of shortcuts, and I just feel like if you want to attach your movie to The Exorcist, you really need to take the time and effort that they did to make The Exorcist, and you didn't take the effort. I feel like you tried to copy off the paper and change your answers to look original, but it didn't work out too well. It's not there. And one of the major missing elements of the movie was about the priests. In the Exorcist, in the original Exorcist, you learn about both Father Merrin and Father Karras, what their motivations are, what their backstory is, how they feel about their faith. One is a little bit wavering in his faith. The other one has faced evil over and over again and is very solid in his faith. One is dealing with the recent loss of his mother. In the new one, virtually nothing about these priests. They show up like in just the last 20 minutes of the movie, and it doesn't it's not grounded. And the same thing with the young ladies. You don't know much about their characters. They put one scene in where they have and what's her name, Angelica? Yeah, Angelica acts similar to Reagan when she's being playful with her mother, and that's about it. That's all you know about her character. And her friend Catherine, even less. So it's hard for the people to connect to these two characters when they become possessed, because you didn't introduce them and make us get to know them before you introduce them. Everything is rushed. It's the timing of everything is just not correct when it comes to that style of movie. And I think that's what does it a disservice. Now, the two young ladies, once they do become possessed, excellent actors. I thought their acting was really top notch. The special effects makeup looks great. I thought it looked very, very creepy, very effective. And the jump scares they had in there, with the audience I saw it with, a lot of people screamed and jumped. So it was very effective.
It was working for them. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I've not seen it. Like, obviously, I'm going in with muted expectations, but I'm sure I'll comment on it another time when I finally see it on the channel. But just quickly, what did you think of his Halloween movies? Were you a fan of those or not really?
I actually, this is where I have an unpopular opinion. I actually enjoyed Halloween Ends. I know a lot of people greatly disliked it, but I think what I've seen, and this is just my pontification, I think it depends on how you feel about Halloween 3. Because right from the beginning, when that font is in that blue from Halloween 3, he's letting you know that this is going to be a departure. And if you like Halloween 3, I think you may enjoy Halloween Ends. If you did not like Halloween 3 and did not like the departure from the Michael Myers story, then you're not going to enjoy Halloween Ends, because there is a big departure. I do think some of the writing fell short, because to me, I would have preferred if the young man what was his name? Was it Corey? I think his name was Corey. If he had kept the clown mask, I thought the clown mask was creepier.
Okay.
And it had him, be his own thing. And also, I would have liked if they tied both of those masks back to the Silver Shamrock factory, because there is a deleted scene from Halloween 3 where when they're in the Silver Shamrock, I can't say it, Shamrock factory, you see the traditional jack-o'-lantern skeleton and witch masks, but in the background you see someone wheeling a cart of the Michael Myers masks by in the background.
Oh, okay.
So you could have tied that back to the Silver Shamrock and the Thorn cult and all that, you know, stuff that they were trying to do with the mask, and just said that Corey had, you know, gotten one of those Silver Shamrock masks. You tie the whole thing together. I don't know why they won't do that.
Okay, well, it definitely could have improved the movie. I'll give you that. Okay, fair enough. I thought it was worth asking. Like, me and my co-host, we've done all the Halloween movies, so you can find our reviews and our thoughts. So we've spent hours discussing and debating the David Gordon Green Halloween movie. So you can go and find those reviews, and people will know our thoughts. So, okay.
I think it would have been great to see a Eli Roth Halloween. I feel like he's better suited. I really, but we'll see when Thanksgiving comes out. They said, okay, he said you won't give me Halloween. Okay, I'm going to take Thanksgiving.
Yeah, absolutely. He wanted a holiday of some sort, so went with the next best one. Okay, well, I'll just jump in quickly and add something, because one of the cinema screenings I went to this month was a screening of the original Exorcist. So not surprising, 50 years now since its release, back in some cinemas. And this, I know this is common ground because I've heard you say this before, but it's my favorite horror movie of all time. And I think you said the same. And I'd seen it once before on the big screen, which was like when it got the director's cut release in 2000. So I did see it at the cinema there. Then
that's when they added back the stair crawl scene.
The spider walk, and that would have been my first time seeing it, I think, because I was only like 20 then, something like that. And I've seen it lots of times since, but like this was the first time back at the cinema seeing it before then. And yeah, it holds up just as much as it ever did. It's just as shocking as it ever was, just as intense. The story is fantastic. I know one of the big things that Freaking said about it was a domestic drama first, and then you sort of work in the horror elements. And
yes, I agree.
I think that's a big part of what makes it work so well. And I know sometimes people, if you are anti-religion, it can be a bit tough, but you do need to put it in context of the era that it was released. And I think even taking that context aside, I still think it's a really shocking, grueling movie. And Linda Blair is just wonderful as well. Like, star-making term for her. She's just so great in it. And it was a pretty packed screening as well. I think there was definitely people who were hardcore fans, but then I think people who were seeing it for the first time. So a nice little mixture in there. And yeah, it just, I mean, there was a lot of toing and throwing. So clearly some people, it wasn't holding their attention. But for me, it definitely was great seeing it at the cinema again. And it held my attention. One thing I did notice, which was a little funny, is I don't know, they might have touched it up a little bit because of the 50th anniversary, because I did notice certain scenes where there seemed to be like modern effects on some of the visuals. So I got the impression they might have touched it up a little bit. And
well, I knew that they did with the spider walk, that the reason why they cut it out of the original cut was because you could still see the wires holding the actor that was doing the spider walk down the stairs. So they digitally removed the wires. So I don't see what would stop them from digitally doing other little things if they wanted to clean it up a bit.
Yeah, and so that stuff, maybe I felt a bit distracted, but just briefly, but it didn't really spoil my overall enjoyment of it. Like, it holds up for me so well, and like I'm sticking by my guns, and it is like the best horror movie ever made. So
I second that. I also rewatched it in October. I watched it in preparation for watching Exorcist Believer because it was Exorcist Believer was sold as a sequel, and it did connect only via one character to the original. But you actually don't need to see the original Exorcist to watch Exorcist Believer. They didn't do much of a connection there. There were so many places where they could have, though. But I rewatched it, and we have surround sound in the living room, so we have the speakers going, and you could hear so much in the soundtrack of The Exorcist that I really enjoyed. And you want to know a fun fact I found out after all these years? The actor that's playing Father Merrin, he was only 40 years old. They put old age makeup on him to make him look like an elderly man. I did all these years. I really thought it was an older actor. I had no idea that this man was only 40 years old.
Because I wondered that as well watching it, because I think Max von Sydow was one of those actors who constantly just looked like he was an old man in like always, even if you're going back to like his earlier roles. So it's just funny, but I guess it makes sense, and they put makeup on him. And also, I do know this is a fun fact, but I know that the one playing the younger priest, he's the father of Jason Patrick, the actor. I remember hearing that.
Didn't know that.
Because it's something Patrick. I can't remember the actor's name, but apparently he's the father of Jason Patrick.
And Jason Patrick was in The Lost Boys, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm sure he was in other things, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of him.
Speed 2. I'm sure that was the one, jump into your mind. Cruise control. So, yeah, that's The Exorcist. We both watched it.
We watched Psycho 2, which still holds up. I really enjoyed it.
I agree. I think it's underrated.
Yeah, it was fun watching my younger sister's reaction to it, because when I saw it, let me think, how old was I when I saw it? Probably about 12. So she was like in elementary school, and she didn't quite remember it. So it was fun watching her reaction to it, because it was like watching it, seeing somebody watch it for the first time and seeing the reaction to the different things that are happening in it that she didn't expect to happen. Yeah, especially the ending with the shovel. She did not expect that.
Yeah, we should have said maybe spoiler warning on this video, but I guess
I didn't say what happened with the shovel. I just said it was a shovel. If you know, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good sequel. I know it's not to everybody's taste, but I think considering it's coming off such a masterpiece, they kind of did what you have to do, which is go in your own direction a little bit. It's obviously a bit more of a black comedy, but it also has like nods to the original as well. So
I should mention at the same time, so I don't go back and forth, I also watched Psycho 3, which again also holds up. It has what's the gentleman's name? He played the lawnmower man. He was in it. And this one was
Brosnan, or the other guy from
the other guy.
I know who you mean. He's in lots of things.
Yeah, he has kind of reddish hair.
I think he was in Lost.
Oh no! I'll just click on it and it'll tell me right here, because
I know who you mean. He normally plays villains.
Jeff Fahey.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in Lost as well.
And I found out that Psycho 3 is actually directed by Anthony Perkins. I didn't know that, but I enjoyed that as well.
Okay.
I think it's solid.
Yeah, solid sequel. Okay. Well, that's definitely a franchise we'll be doing on the channel at some point. So look out for those reviews in the future. Yeah, I'm not sure if I've seen Psycho 3 or not. I might have seen bits of it. So I can't really comment on that one.
It leans more into the slasher genre. I think the kills in it are much more they much more align with a regular slasher movie of the 80s.
Okay. A British film from the 50s. Have you heard of X the Unknown?
I've heard the title before, but I haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, I don't think you're missing much, to be honest. I mean, if you're in the UK, it's on Amazon Prime, so it's probably on YouTube as well, so it's easy enough to watch. And it's this sort of weird sort of sci-fi B movie from the 50s, very low budget, very scrungy effects, which always appeals to me, but lots of posh, stereotypical British style characters. But it was
just a monster movie.
Yeah, monster movie, monster sci-fi. I mean, I would say, again, if you want to tick a box, it's definitely worth watching. And there's a few good scenes, but it was just pretty boring. Like, you just didn't get enough of the fun monster-style scenes. I think the characters were, like, really boring to watch. The acting was really bad. There are some, like, kind of so bad they're good, like, reaction shots, like people screaming type shots, where you can just tell them it's so staged and their reaction just looks so, like, forced. But so those moments are quite funny, like in a so bad they're good style way. But yeah, it wasn't as fun as I was hoping. Like, there's this funny thing, because it's in black and white, there's a scene where, like, the actual substance, which is, like, evil, basically being controlled, is, like, going up a hill, and it's, like, heading towards one of the characters. And partly because it's in black and white, it basically looks like a pile of shit. Like, the effect of it, so it looks like a mountain of shit, like, heading towards these characters.
I just wrote it down so I could the camera. Unknown.
It's a short,
so I can make sure to watch it.
It's a short movie, and it's easy enough to find. It's one of those movies where it can't really make up its mind what, like, the actual entity is going to be, where it keeps, like, adding all these different things. Oh, it's this thing, and then it's this thing, rather than just sticking to, like, one. But
it sounds like they started filming before they finished the script.
Probably. Yeah. So I can't.
Or producers come in and say, "Hey, you should add this."
Yeah. So, like, it's not one I can recommend for everybody, but I can recommend it as for genre fans like us who just enjoy checking out as much as we can and ticking a few boxes. It's, there are moments, as I said, so bad they're good style moments, but overall it wasn't the best, I'd say.
Just rip-off movies.
As you do.
The first one I watched was Satan, which is a Turkish shot-for-shot remake of The Exorcist. I believe it came out in 1974. Yeah, 1974. 1 year after The Exorcist. I'm just going to group them together. I watched Exorcismo, which is was made in 1975. This one was, I don't know which country, but it also was I think it might have been Spain. Exorcismo might have been Spain.
Okay. Sounds
and like it. The Return of the Exorcist, Italy.
I'm sure people.
I found it. It was Italy. The Return of the Exorcist is the Italian version. And then there's also a movie called Daughter from 2015, which is Hong Kong, I think. I'll show the poster. This is the Chinese Exorcist.
Okay.
It's called Daughter.
So their own take on it.
Yeah, all of them were enjoyable in their own way, and they stuck closer to the format of The Exorcist than Exorcist Believer. So we jumped all the way. We went from Turkey to Spain to Italy to China, and everyone understands it.
Yeah, much better. So check those out. Don't check out Exorcist Believer by the sounds of it. Finally checked out. I watched it properly. I'd seen bits of it, but the film Possession from 1981.
Yes.
This really extreme art house movie with Sam Neill, a very young Sam Neill, playing an absolute psychopath. This is such a bizarre movie where, on the one hand, it feels like a very full-on, like, artsy style movie about, like, the fall down of a relationship and, like, the Sam Neill character just abusing the Isabel Ajar character. about like their interactions, their relationship when it comes to their son, who he wants to still have an involvement with, and he's kind of playing mind games with her to try and control that. But on the other hand, it's such a bonkers B movie as well at times, where you'll get these really extreme, intense scenes, but they'll often play out in a very hammy, over the top way. And at the same time, you get really trippy visuals in it. So one of the most famous scenes of the movie is, of course, like the main female character like having sex with what appears to be like a giant squid sort of thing. So that's kind of where she's getting her kicks. So it's an absolute mad cult movie, but which also feels very sort of arty and serious at times. It's kind of similar to a Michael Haneke style movie, I think, at times, like the way it's shot and some of the ideas about like abuse and relationships. Very well acted. I mean, I know Isabelle Adjara had a horrible time on the set, like doing it, but she's a real trooper in the movie, and Sam Neill is very convincing also. But because you've got these two extremes which don't normally like sort of cross over, whereas I said it's very serious and arty and uncomfortable and intense, but you also get like moments which are so heightened and hammy, then they do kind of make you have a chuckle. And then you've got weird, trippy, like B-movie style moments as well. So it's a very interesting bag of a movie. And the ending is also very shocking and memorable. But it's... So I think I recommend it, but it's hard to really judge in that way. It's hard to really say exactly what the movie is and how to like put it in some sort of a category in a way. And it's hard to really say, like, am I meant to be having an entertaining time with this movie, or am I meant to be like shocked and appalled by it? But it's an experience without doubt. So I recommend it for that. That's Possession.
Yeah. If it was released today, they would call it elevated horror. I think it has a lot in common with Midsommar. In that, like, Midsummer was about, I keep wanting to say Midsommar because the way that it's spelled. But it has a lot in common with that movie in that it's both a horror movie, but it's also a drama about a relationship. So it makes it kind of multi-layered. And I like that about it. I also I believe it takes place in Berlin before the time that the Berlin Wall was taken down. So that's a moment in time as well. And there's a side character. I don't know what he is. He's like her friend, but he's an artist or something. He's so odd. But I like every time he shows up because he's just an over-the-top character.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an experience. I mean, I know a lot of people into horror or drama movies would already have seen it, but it's definitely one of those movies where you spend a good portion of it kind of laughing, but then a good portion also being shocked and like on the edge of your seat. And sometimes it's both in the same scene. So it is such a weird one, but it's worth checking out, I think, because of that.
I would recommend it to people if you like David Cronenberg style movies. I think you might like this one.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely.
Totally Killer. That was a very interesting one. I watched Totally Killer, which is an Amazon original horror movie. And it's basically kind of like Back to the Future, but also a slasher movie. Because the basis is that a character ends up going back in time accidentally, but they decide that they're going to try to find out who a slasher in their small town is to save their parent. Because their parent it ended up being a victim of that slasher. So it's very, very cool. I like that the main character is Gen Z because there are certain people in Gen Z that are very, very fascinated by 80s aesthetic. I see them on TikTok and they're trying to recreate 80s hair. They're getting cassette tapes, their records. They're very fascinated by the 1980s, and her character is similar in that way. And it's fun to see her character go back in time and actually experience the 80s as they really were, and not necessarily the idealized side of the 80s that they might see. So I thought it was pretty decent, and it was not as predictable as I thought it was going to be. The trailer makes it look very predictable, but everything they showed in the trailer happens in the first 20 minutes of the movie, so it's not as predictable as what the trailer would lead you to believe. And I like that they didn't give away the movie.
Nice. So there are some surprises because, yeah, it's on my list to see. We were going to do it this month, or last month, I should say, but I was having internet problems for a while, so it's one we've put on the back burner, but it's one I'll get to. And yeah, I've heard different things, but it definitely seemed like one that was worth a watch and could be quite good fun. They've also pretty good cast as well, because I definitely like Kira Shipka, and she's one of those actresses I like. I feel like I've watched her grow up because she was obviously Sally Draper on Mad Men, and that went 7 seasons, so you do see her sort of like age quite a lot in that, and now she's quite a big star because of Chilling Adventures, and has been in other horror movies as well. So we watched Serpico from the 70s. So the Sidney Lumet Al Pacino movie. This is definitely one of like the big Al Pacino roles where people talk about his peak era as an actor. And so what the plot is, then he goes undercover. Like, he's already a policeman, but he sort of recognizes some corruption within a local precinct, and he decides to go undercover as a cop to try and expose it. And he's working with a couple of like other officials, other policemen, to try and expose it. And it just becomes that sort of story about the paranoia in the police force, and about how so many of them in this one precinct, and kind of across the sea in many ways, how corruption just became a very common thing, and how it became a very masculine, like boys club style thing, where it's very much, just keep this quiet. And if you don't keep it quiet, if you try to expose it, you're not really one of us, and we're going to make life difficult for you. And it's a really interesting movie, like, especially since it's from the 70s, because it explores, different sexualities and like homosexuality as well. But like, because there's this really amusing scene early on where this one of like the higher ups in the police station gets really paranoid that the Pacino character is like going into this dark like locker room with this other police guy, and he just thinks they're up to something, like they are like gay, and that becomes a stigma that becomes attached to him. And his whole character is like just very like free living, and like almost like a hippie style character. And it's never really confirmed that he is gay, but like he just is that kind of like open-minded type character who is more progressive in his thinking than the majority of people around him. So that's a very interesting side to the story as well. But also it's that classic thing of him being obsessed by this, him being just determined that he has to be the one to bring this whole thing down. And later on in the film, it sort of risks his marriage because he becomes like so consumed by it. So it's a really interesting movie. It's very like gritty and stylish. It really captures a certain era of like 70s New York.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if it was in New York. Yeah, I love movies that capture that 70s New York and early 80s New York. And when you said Al Pacino, it made me think of the movie Cruising, which was also set in around 79, 1980, maybe 81 New York. And similar themes, except for he was investigating a murderer, and the murder was targeting people that were in the the gay community in New York in the late 70s. It's based off of a true crime scenario where I think the murder was called the garbage bag killer because the people's remains were found in garbage bags around New York in the late 70s. So the movie is kind of based off of that actual serial killer, but it's about also Al Pacino's character playing an investigator trying to find this person that's killing people in New York. And it was pretty progressive for what we think of that time period, you know?
Yeah, Cruising, again, it comes back William Friedkin because that's one of his movies from the early 80s. And I've only seen it once, but I think it's a great movie. And I think it's one of the most underrated Pacino roles as well. I think he's great in it. And it's just one of those things because, I mean, a lot of people know about Serpico and like, I think that's one of the roles that really put him on the map and like deservedly so. I think he's wonderful in Serpico and it's become quite an influential movie but by the same token, I would say definitely Cruising is a very misunderstood and underrated movie. So I would definitely recommend people checking out Cruising.
Exterminator, which is how to describe it? It's a vigilante movie. Though, well, I wouldn't say as good as Commando. It's kind of more of a B movie version of even better, Death Wish. It's like a B movie Death Wish. And this character is not Charles Bronson at all, but he tries to be like Charles Bronson in that he's taking revenge in the most violent ways against these group of I guess they're gang members that injured his friend that saved him in Vietnam. So he has his best friend that saved him in the POW camp in Vietnam, and they both work together at this factory. And his friend and him stop these guys from stealing beer. And so the guys come back and they exact revenge on his friend in an alley. And they beat him so badly that he becomes paralyzed. And so this guy decides he's going to take revenge on the gang, but he also finds out that the gang is working for this gangster that's more powerful than the gang. So he tries to work his way up, taking revenge. It has a very surprising ending, one that is very subversive and very political for the time being. It's like really, when I say political, I don't mean left-leaning versus right-leaning. It's none of that BS. It's political in that it does make a statement about the government in the U.S. That's what I mean by it's political. So like you wouldn't expect that at the ending, but it's very, very. I enjoyed it. I think even though it's a B, it would be classed a B movie. I really, really enjoyed it. It starred. I kept on calling him Paul McCartney because he kind of looks. It's Robert Ginty.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Paul McCartney is out for revenge. But it's 1980s, called The Exterminator. Where did I watch it? I think it's on YouTube, actually. It's on YouTube. This weekend, I'm hoping to watch The Exterminator 2, which I think came out in 1984.
Yeah, the saga must go on. Okay, cool. I've not seen that one. I know of it, but I'll definitely put that on.
I should show the poster for everyone to see. Well. He does use a flamethrower at one point in the movie.
That's a good poster. I got to say, I like the font as well on the poster. That's pretty cool. Okay, so my next movie, well, I'll keep it short and sweet because it's a pretty crappy, like straight to DVD style movie, and it's called Demon Island. It stars Nicholas Brendon from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who's also a producer on it. And it's one of those really cheap and tacky style movies with just like ridiculously bad effects, but a completely silly, ridiculous plot. It's one of those where it's all about like an ancient tribe, and you actually get an evil pinata. That's the whole gimmick of the movie, and you get these like people who are there like on some sort of a break, and they're like in a group and they're doing like tasks. It's almost very like commando style thing. I can't remember what the group were actually called, but Nicholas Brendon does play quite similar to his Buffy character, so he does actually bring a little bit of a charisma to it. And it's cheesy fun. Like it's definitely a terrible movie. I'm not going to say anything differently, but I would be lying if there weren't stuff about it and just stuff which you associate with the era, because I think it was like 2003, like roughly that sort of time. Like just some of like the visual effects and the way they bring up the opening credits that are just so 2003. Like you can just tell it was done on a computer, and that really stands out now. Whereas at the time, that was just accepted as, okay, this is like modern visual effects. Like, and also it's got a really cheesy reggae song which closes the movie, which absolutely had me in stitches. But it's a terrible movie, but it definitely has some fun for people who are into like terrible movies. So, yeah, that's Demon Island.
My favorite cheesy Jamaican song from a horror movie is a song from Popcorn. There's like there's like a musical interlude where it's like a Jamaican reggae band, and they're singing about the popcorn and the movie theater. And I didn't know until years later that they were featured because the movie was shot in Jamaica. Like you really would think that it was
something about it being in Jamaica.
Yeah, it's meant to look like California or LA, but you know, because the palm trees and everything. But the palm trees in Jamaica are shorter than the ones in LA. But I didn't know until like recently that it was filmed in Jamaica. So it was cool that they put the Jamaican band in the movie.
Yeah, that's a fun fact. And I think a lot of just really cheap movies like that do shoot in other countries because it's just cheaper to do. So, but it's always funny when they're meant to be like in a big USC and then you see.
Yeah, like Jason Takes Vancouver.
Yeah,
Jason Takes Vancouver. Not in the Last Screen movie, also where they were meant to be in New York, but they're actually in Vancouver, Canada.
Of course they were. Okay, over to you.
I rewatched One Missed Call after, gosh, has it been 20 years? When did One Missed Call come out?
Yeah,
2003. Can you believe that? It's been 20 years.
Crazy.
That's so wild to me. Just as creepy as it was the first time. It holds up really, really well. It's also fun to see the flip phones. I really enjoy seeing those flip phones because they weren't all as basic as one might think. I remember around that time, 2003 to 2005, was when the flip phones first started being able to connect to the internet, and you could take photos with them. And they started to be. I remember my first smartphone was a flip phone. I believe it was a Samsung. I think so. But yeah, I remember being so excited that I could record video on it. But it was still difficult for you to take the video from your phone to like social media. Like you would actually have to plug your phone into your laptop and then take the video off it as if it was like a portable hard drive or something, and then post it if you wanted to post it or whatever. It wasn't like today where you can just add the touch of a button. You can save it to, you know, your cloud, your Google Drive or anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool.
And the song that the phone plays is iconic.
Okay, cool. I still need to see it. It's one I haven't seen, but I know of it because it's obviously one from around that era when Asian horror was becoming big, which was always really promoted quite a lot as one of the big Asian horrors you had to see. So
yeah, this one stands out because it is it's not the same creepy ghost girl type of horror. It's more of technology horror where what happens is a person will receive a voicemail from themselves, but it's from the future of what may happen to them. So imagine receiving a voicemail and you hear your own voice and you hear the last thing you said before you were unalived. And that's and they have to try to figure out how to stop this technological haunting, I guess you would call it.
That's pretty wild, especially for a 2003 movie. So it seems like they were really ahead of the game there. So that's exciting. New Friday the 13th movies, because we had Friday the 13th this month. So I did a double bill because what I've been doing is on streams. Every time there's a Friday the 13th, I've been watching another one of the series. So I've been working through them in order on streams. So one of my local cinemas also had a screening of the original movie from 1980. So I've seen it quite a few times. I've never seen it at the cinema, so I thought I might as well see that at the cinema. I had a good time. It's a fun movie. It's not the best of those movies, but for the original movie, I think it's entertaining, pretty good fun. And then the movie that I'm up to on like watching them on online is the fifth one, A New Beginning, which is one of the weaker ones in my opinion. It's not one of the best. Is
that the one when Tommy Jarvis was in the group home with the other kids?
Yes.
Yeah. That's one of my guilty pleasure ones. I love that one.
It had its moments, but 4 was definitely better.
Yeah, 4 is 4, and I also love 3D. But 4 is definitely one of the best of the whole series. But I have a theory about the Friday the 13th characters. I was saying that most slashers, this is one of the things that I was criticizing Terrifier for. That Terrifier doesn't have a good heroine. I feel like the characters that they make for the heroine are just not memorable. I can't remember any of their names, and they're just that girl. Like, there's nothing memorable. And I remember saying, well, everyone remembers Nancy. Everyone remembers. See, I, as soon as I say everyone remembers, and the name just blanks on me. I was thinking of
Sydney and
Sydney, and I was thinking of Homegirl from Hellraiser. I'm picturing her in my face when he's saying, "It's me."
I was about to say
Kirsty.
There,
yeah, we remember them, but for Friday the 13th, that they don't need that for some reason. Friday the 13th movies work without there being this impressive heroine, and I think it's because they give the characters these little quirks that you remember. Like, you remember Crispin Glover's weird dancing. You remember the damn enchiladas. You remember the breakdancing girl. It's just that, or Shelley with the masks. They don't just give one final girl. It's just this collection of characters, and we're just going to give them these little quirks that you're going to remember. The twins that went to the party, and I think it was part 4 with the twins. Like, there was just these little quirks that they give to the characters. That the girl with the banana, we remember that. Why do we remember that? These are such little things that shouldn't mean anything, but they're very memorable for Friday the 13th characters. So I think that's the only slasher film that doesn't need a solid final girl, because they make all the characters just quirky enough for you to remember them.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And there's something about like 80s, like annoying but entertaining characters, and as long as you've got the good kills and the antics, you're gonna have a good time, really. And I think you're right, because like if you just like compare it to something like Scream, because with the Scream movies, Ghostface is in theory off screen a lot of time, and it's obviously builds up to the reveal of who exactly it is. And I think that gimmick after a while becomes overplayed. So I think whether you like or dislike a Scream movie comes down more to the main characters, like the final girl and her group of friends. Opposite of with Friday the 13th, where it's about the goofy fun, and it's also about Jason and like some entertaining kills. As you mentioned Terrifier there, I'll just jump in and I'll agree that Terrifier is overrated personally. I did catch up with that over the Halloween season, and it was just okay. I quite enjoyed it, but it wasn't that amazing. Like, I don't quite get the hype for it personally. So, yeah.
I like the gore and I like the creature design of Art the Clown, but the story just, it's the writing. I think there's something missing in the writing. I'm still looking forward to Terrifier 3, because they might, nail it this time.
Yeah, well, I was catching up with it. I mean, that's the
Mhm.
first one I sort of watched on Halloween.
Mhm.
And I watched it along with Scream 6, which was a rewatch because I saw that earlier this
Mhm.
year. And Scream 3, I think, is one of the better sequels from that franchise. I much prefer it to Scream 5.
Mhm.
But there's a whole video, me and Rachel talking about that, so I don't need to say anything else. But
Mhm.
yeah, those are actually the two movies I watched on stream on Halloween, Night of the Creeps from the
Yes.
80s.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
The good
this
news
was
is your dates are here. The bad news is they're dead. And you can
and
play a drinking game with it. Take a sip every time he says "thrill me."
yeah, yeah, yeah. This was great fun. I absolutely loved the black and white opening and the way it's
Mhm.
like nodding to like classic like monster movies from that sort of
Mhm.
era. And it's just so tongue in cheek and fun, where it's
Mhm.
definitely nodding at like the classic monster B movies. It's almost like sending up quite cheesy sort of teen movies as well.
Mhm.
And I think the characters are like endearing enough where you go along for the ride with them. The romance is decent for what it is. You've also got really fun, practical,
Mhm.
gooey effects, which are good. Like you've got a fun sense of mood and nice sort of synth music, and you've also got one of the great action stars, Tom Atkins, on
Mhm.
fine form as well. Like me and Rachel, when we did Halloween 3, we tended to call him like the action version of Tom Selleck. So that's what he'll always be known to us. But he's
Mhm.
great in the movie.
And in Creepshow,
In Creepshow.
he played the angry father.
Yeah, yeah. No, not Night of the Creeps. It was a first time watch, and
Oh, okay.
it's a really entertaining movie. So I'd recommend that one.
Yes, I like that it's set in college. Also, sometimes I feel like there's way too many movies set in high school. College is a good
Mm,
time. Setting more stuff in college,
yeah,
or grad school.
I-
Flatliners was set in grad school. You can do these things.
yeah. Change it up sometimes.
Comedy called Old Dads that stars Bill Burr,
Okay.
and Bobby Cannavale, and who was the third actor in it? There was a third actor who I think they probably meant for it to be Dave Chappelle, but it was Bokeem Woodbine instead.
Okay.
Um, and it's about men that are in their 40s, um,
Okay.
becoming
That's
fathers.
one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, where they're not becoming fathers. Two of them, Bill Burr and Bobby Cannavale's character, both have young children that are like 4 years old, 4 or 5 ish, and Bokeem Woodbine's character has already raised his children. He's divorced and he's in a new relationship, and his new girlfriend informs him that she's pregnant. So he's like, I don't know whether I want to do this again. I'm 45 years old. I already raised my kids. They're like almost out of the house. They're like teenagers. One is about to go to college. I don't know if I can handle doing a baby again. So it's a comedy about them navigating through life, not only being in their late 40s to early 50s, but also working in the world that we live in now, where their boss is younger than them. Their boss is like, he gives off, maybe he's a cusper, not quite Gen Z. I think younger millennial, like maybe 27ish, but that's still really close to the cusp of being Gen Z, and having to navigate through a world where social media is a thing for their job, and we having to worry about if they say things outside of work that winds up on social media, they could lose their job because it's not politically correct. And there's a lot of jokes to be made in that, on both sides, which is funny because it pokes fun at Gen X for being very how do I describe us? um kind of edgelordish. I think Gen X is a little bit edgelordish. We say things,
Okay.
and we don't mean harm when we're saying, and we think it's funny. But to another generation, it can come across as being very insensitive, especially when it comes to ability. They what to say? There's ability shaming, age shaming, weight shaming, just different type of shaming, where I can completely see where that can come off being extremely, extremely inconsiderate. but it also pokes fun at a younger generation that they were trying to put together. These are younger parents that are in their 20s and they have, children at the same school, and they're trying to put together like this community event, but they can't even put together a community event because they're so offended by every little thing. So it's like funny, making fun of the one side being not sensitive enough and the other side being overly sensitive. And what's great about the movie is they do eventually come together in the end and kind of meet in the middle, where they say, okay, yeah, we might be overplaying the oversensitivity part, and the other side says, yeah, we might be being a little bit too insensitive. So I think it had a good message towards the end of it, but it had a lot of comedy that was poking fun. It even poked fun at boomers. At the very end, a boomer shows up and they're even worse.
Silent Rage. So
Silent Rage, it sounds familiar.
The title, yeah. So
let me look at the
I'll describe it and you can look it up. But it's a Chuck Norris movie.
Oh yes, then I do remember where he's chasing this serial killer, and he does a lot of kicking with those jeans on. I remember thinking, how can he kick so high with these tight jeans on? Because the jeans didn't have stretch back then. So yes, I have seen Silent Rage. I do remember that.
Yeah, but the reason it appealed to me was that it didn't actually feel like that much of a Chuck Norris movie, because he sort of plays the typical white bread, like goody sheriff style character. So he's doing the Chuck Norris bit, and you do get quite an entertaining karate fight at the end of the movie. But outside of that stuff, it does feel more like a sort of a B movie sci-fi mixed with a slasher. Like I sort of think of it as like almost a cross between the Terminator and like a Frankenstein style story, where you do get this mad scientist sort of plot about this guy is apparently dead after like an altercation with the Norris character, and secretly these like doctors are like reviving him rather than doing the honorable thing, which is to put him out of misery. They actually give him regenerated sort of powers, and that becomes the plot. And you've got another doctor played by Ron Silver who believes that he's telling them, don't be messing about with this stuff, just do the right thing and put this guy out of his misery. And he goes away and tells the Chuck Norris character, yep, that guy's dead. And he goes off home, and it turns out they've revived him, they've regenerated him, and he goes on a killing spree. He actually kills the Ron Silver, his family, and also him. And then you have like his sister, who's the main character, who's also dating the Chuck Norris character. So it all comes back around to like the Chuck Norris character trying to like finally kill off this regenerated serial killer. Shasha feel with like a B movie, like sci-fi, and some pretty good characters. Like Ron Silver's always very watchable. So yeah, surprisingly it was solid, I would say. Like not a bad sort of cult movie.
Killer also jumped from a second-story window and did not get hurt. I think he jumped from a second-story window, and the cops almost got him, and he got away. And that's when Chuck Norris really starts to try to.
That does sound right. Yeah, but yeah, Silent Rage.
Dead Next Door, which the poster looks so much better than what this is the poster for it. That's the Dead Next Door.
I like the title and I like the poster. That's a great poster.
Yeah, it's from 1989, but it's shot on VHS. it's actually it was pretty entertaining. It was just basically about a government zombie squad that just tries to battle zombies, and that's basically the gist of it. It's just that squad in a station wagon going around trying to battle zombies and trying to find out. I think they were trying to find a person who. I think one person, like a villain, was trying to use the zombies for some reason, but I don't recall what. He was like trying to corral the zombies and keep them in cages. I don't recall what the reasoning was for, but it's very B movie, very B movie, but entertaining. Exorcist, that one. That is a recent movie from 2023. It's directed by Jose Prendes. Your typical Exorcist ripoff movie, but it kind of goes in its own direction, which I liked a lot. The one thing I didn't really love was the demon voice. I thought the demon voice wasn't very creepy. And I feel like the well, what I was told, because I spoke to Jose, he really would have preferred to make it rated R, but the producer said it had to be PG-13. So there were things that he kind of had to cut out that he really would have preferred to leave it in. So knowing that, that's why it might feel not as potent as a regular Exorcist movie, but you can only do what production allows you to do. But I think he did a good job with what he was given. The last one I had was Project Wolf Hunting, which is, oh my God, this movie is amazing. Project Wolf Hunting.
I do like that poster.
Yeah, that is, I believe it was on Netflix. It's a South Korean movie. It's about these prisoners that are on a ship. But they're on a ship with a Frankenstein-like monster. And it gets very, very violent and gory as these criminals try to escape the ship with this Frankensteinish, superhumanly strength monster on it with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It came out in 2022. It's
just last year, so
yeah.
My Kind of Cruise.
Yes.
See Five Nights at Freddy's, the new one, but there's a review of that on the channel, so I won't say too much. All I'll say is that I'm a bit casual because I'm not familiar with the games, and I would say it was middling overall. Not really great, not really terrible, just sort of in the middle. It was sort of fine, but I definitely wasn't the target audience for that one. So there you go. There's a review on the channel. I also watched, I don't know if you've seen this movie, a Brazilian movie called Medusa.
No,
it's actually spelled M-E instead of M-A, so Medusa. And I went to a screening of that at my local picture house. And that's a very interesting Brazilian film, which really captures the sort of like extreme religious climate of Brazilian politics around that time. So it's about a group of women who believe in they're doing the work of God, go out at night and basically attack and shame women who they deem as being like whores and sexually explicit, and like a new recruit from like a family where there's like a connection between someone who's been with this group for a very long time, and she's actually the character you follow, not the younger one, but the one who's been with them for a while, who recruits her. And that's because as things go on, you sort of have this plot where they hear about a movie star who was quite famous, who was like a person of interest for this group because of some of her like so-called antics and her like kind of celebrity, and she randomly disappeared one day, so this character's curious in tracking her down, and so she goes undercover to this council ward where she believes this character might be staying, like recouping type thing. And it really gets a lot into like the politics of Brazil in that section, because there's like comments about how this cancer ward isn't being funded properly by the local government and things like that, and just the conditions. And it turns into a really interesting movie because like you start to have this character once she has like experiences at this ward, and she gets interested in a guy there and experiences a different worldview than she's been used to, where she actually starts to have changes, and she starts to question if maybe what she's been taught and what she's been doing with this super extreme religious group is really the right sort of way. And so it's part horror, part sort of social political satire. There's some good horror scenes. There's some like very tense horror scenes, like the stuff with, as I said, like this group of women stalking these other like vulnerable women on nights out. And there's some creepy scenes around this ward as well at night. There's some well shot scenes. You get some hilarious scenes where like they're doing like these performances where they're singing like political songs and super cheesy religious songs, and it really digs deep into that side of the thing. But it's one of those movies where it's best to go in not knowing too much about it, and it's definitely one of those movies that by the end it doesn't spell everything out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you definitely have to make up your own mind what exactly happened in at the end of the movie, and what it's exactly saying, like what's in the character's mind and what isn't, because there's definitely a lot left open about what she experiences at this ward. So it's very stylish, very powerful, and makes you think a lot about a lot of different like social issues. So yeah, that came out 2021, so a couple of years ago, and I'd highly recommend it. So yeah, look out for that one. And
I've written it down.
yeah, I think you would like it. You'll have to let me know what you think about it when you've seen it. And I mean, speaking of great classic horror movie and seeing it on the big screen, and I'm with a couple of these for films, but I also saw on the big screen for the first time Hellraiser, and that
Nice.
the same day but same week as I saw The Exorcist, and
that is a treat. And the score is so good for both of those.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with what you said. Kirsty is a very underrated final girl. I think she does deserve more credit as a final girl. And yeah, Hellraiser is an absolute cult classic. It's very funny at times, very like blackly funny, but just a really fun conceit and like great practical effects. And
oh yes,
I always get a laugh out of like her seducing these really nasty like yuppie style characters and like luring them back to the house.
They walk by the water. I'm like, that's the water from A Clockwork Orange. I don't know the name of the area, but I know that's from A Clockwork Orange, and that's from the Misfits. I know that's clearly in the UK. I always wondered what, I guess it was for during that time period. They wanted to be more I don't know why people think that because something is set in America, it's going to be more accessible. I don't think that I think that that's kind of a outdated mode of thinking, because like things are so international. I don't see why anyone would be like, oh, I'm not going to watch it because it was in England. Like, are you kidding me? This is 20 to 30 years after Peeping Tom, which was in England, and Repulsion, which was also shot in London. Like, no, why did that suddenly become a thing that it had to be in America? I don't understand that. Villain.
Another channel. Oh, she's fantastic. Yeah.
Yes. And Hellraiser 2. Oh my God, she gets even more villainous.
Yeah, great fashion as well. But yeah, Hellraiser holds up. Definitely, it's another one that holds up. And I'll mention this as my last film before we move on to TV. But this was also a first-time screening, and I saw this at the cinema as well. But I saw a screening of Spartacus, and that was the first time I'd ever seen that. And I go up and down on Kubrick. Some of his films I really like, some I don't like, some I find overrated, like The Shining I think is overrated.
I agree with you on that one.
So this was the first time watch, and it's like a subgenre which I don't normally like sword and sandals, that kind of subgenre I find really boring, but this was a good movie. Like, it really holds your attention, and they tell a good story. You've got iconic scenes. You've got really beautifully shot, great music, and it's a 3-hour movie, but it definitely holds your attention. And it was sort of fitting because I saw it on a Sunday afternoon, so it did feel a bit like a Sunday matinee sort of screening. It felt like the sort of classic Hollywood epic they would show at like a matinee style screening. So it was a fitting like day and time to see it. So Spartacus I saw on the big screen, and I would say, yeah, I'd recommend that one for people who haven't seen it. I'm sure a lot of people have, but Yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out.
Recovering from on your channel, and it's a really really good series. I definitely recommend rewatching it or finishing it up if you haven't seen From. But I'll let you talk more about that because it's more fresh in your mind. I just finished watching Mask Girl, which is a
Okay.
is it South Korean? I believe it is South Korean. It's a series. It only has 7 or 8 episodes. It's very, very interesting. It's about a woman who, by day, she looks like she works in like a regular corporate cubicle type office. They never say what she does, but at night she does live streams where she wears a mask and no one ever sees her face. And she grew up being quite unattractive. So it's very interesting that you see all these people connect with her, and she even has like a stalker type guy or more than one stalker type guy looking for her. And she ends up in a situation where a murder happens that she's involved in, and she gets extreme plastic surgery, and now she is gorgeous. And so I don't want to tell much more than that because it does toe the line between being a K-drama and being a horror series. Like it's both things. So there's a lot of twists and turns with her character and another character, and they keep adding characters. It's very, very, very interesting show, but it's called Mask Girl. And it also tonally changes. There's some parts that are very comedic and other parts that are very serious and horrific. So
I've heard of it. Yeah, I haven't seen it. Where can people find that?
Oh, it's on Netflix.
Netflix. Oh, nice. So nice and easy. Okay. So my first show I'll mention is I did a rewatch. I've seen this show a couple of times, but I rewatched Veronica Mars, which everybody knows about really. But Veronica Mars, highly recommend if you like a good noir sort of coming of age, quite a gritty show at times. The show that made Christian Bale a star. You've got a really charming, playful, like father-daughter relationship in that show. Also, it's very well cast with lots of guest stars. And the first season, obviously, the case, especially the Who Killed Lily Kane case, is just a textbook example of how you do a really engrossing, edge of your seat twists and turns, like who done it, but sort of pace it over a whole season. Like it's definitely a nod to like the Who Killed Laura Palmer case on Twin Peaks. They're definitely referencing that, but moving it forward a bit and doing their own thing on it. Christian Bale is just such a natural in the lead because she can just play those two sides of it, where she's very charismatic and very witty with great sense of humor, but also she can play the more dramatic parts as well very well. And it is a surprisingly dark show at times, and it's a very, I think at times, nihilistic sort of show where it is very honest about like life, high school life, and kind of the Sharonness of like these characters, like in a rich part of like California. But it has wonderful dialogue, wonderful characters. You've got a good group of friends. I think Wallace is a great best friend character for Veronica Mars, as is Mac. They both bring something a little different to the group, if you like, and they have a nice little group vibe. And you do get surprising character arcs. Like Logan, I think, has a really surprising character arc. Like if you said at the start of the show, this really obnoxious bad boy style character would go on to become a long-term character, part of the main cast, and also like the on-off love interest for Veronica, you would have said, I can't really see that. But he does grow and mature a lot as the seasons go on. And like obviously after the first season, it's a little up and down, but I personally enjoy season 3 quite a lot because you get some good character growth in that season. They did a movie, obviously, when the show was cancelled. And the movie is surprisingly solid as well, where it's that awkward sort of in Pachin style movie where they have to try and make it accessible for fans who maybe didn't see the show, but they also have to satisfy the target audience and kind of give them a satisfying end to the story, if you like. And obviously then there was a sort of an 8-episode one-off revival a few years ago, which I enjoy quite a lot. A lot of people shit on that, and that's one where I definitely think it's much better than people give it credit for. But so Veronica Mars, if you're into that kind of show, I think it definitely ticks a lot of those boxes, and that is one that me and Rachel are both interested in doing a review of. So we'll definitely do a review of that in the future.
Okay. It stars Lakeith Stanfield from Atlanta. He was also in Sorry to Bother You, and there was something else I feel like he was in. Get Out. Yeah, he was in Get Out. It started out very, very promising. It's like the title says, Changeling. It's about thematically a little bit about a other being taking the place of your child. And this tug of war he has with his wife, who believes that their child is a changeling, and he doesn't believe that the child is a changeling. Other things happen because it's described as taking place in an alternate New York that exists in a fantasy fairy tale land. So it does go more into dark fantasy than it does horror, although it does have horrific elements. I was a bit disappointed because the pacing is excruciatingly slow. I mean, so slow. Like episode 7 could have been 20 minutes long. It didn't need to be. It was like well over an hour, and it was mostly monologues that just weren't so great. So I can't really recommend the Changeling, the first season. The first episode was very, very good, and then it just from there, I think they didn't have enough content to stretch into 8 episodes. I think maybe it would have worked better as 4 or 5. Okay. I don't think everything needs to be 8 episodes, because by doing it, it seemed like there was things that were stretched so thin that didn't need to be.
I think I've heard similar things, and then it ended up being, it was promising at first, but then a bit of a disappointment. And that's Apple TV Plus, isn't it? That's ITV in this country, which is called The Long Shadow, which is another drama about the Yorkshire Ripper. And this one does take on a slight twist where it does look more at like the gender politics of it, and it takes a look at, I mean, obviously the investigation over many years, and just you kind of get the twists and turns of them thinking it's one guy, and then it turns out it might not be. And it definitely is very critical of the investigation and how they overlooked a lot of things, and how there was almost an agenda where they just wanted to tie the case up. So, and they were so determined to like just focused on one area of the investigation without keeping an open mind. So it's very critical of the policing at that time, but it also definitely gets into like the gender side of it, where you had a lot of hardworking women who were doing their best and kind of being taken, like, sort of like they were being taken for granted. And at the same time, because the women, it was obviously all female victims, it sort of gets into how they were treated at times, and how, because a portion of them were prostitutes or hookers, or at least perceived that way, then it was that era where they were sneered at because of them doing that to try and make ends meet, rather than just, everybody's a human being, everyone's an innocent victim. And I really got into it. I was really engrossed, because sometimes these kind of like, these done for TV, like ITV style dramas, I think sometimes they can be a bit dry and not that interesting. And sometimes you wonder what new you can add to this kind of thing where it's been done a lot of times. But this was definitely one where they definitely did find a bit of a fresh angle, and it was really engrossing to watch, really thought provoking, with a good cast as well. So
I haven't heard of the Yorkshire Ripper. That's what time period did that happen in?
sort of 70s, 80s, that
Oh,
sort of era. So
yeah, I wrote
yeah,
it down. I'll look up. I'll probably look up a documentary about it because I hadn't heard of that one. The Chucky series, which is really good. It's only 4 episodes in, and I love Chucky. The gore is amazing for what they can do on television. Like, I'm shocked at how far they can go. It's still holding up. It's being done by Don Mancini, who did the original Chucky. I mean, the Child's Play movies.
yeah,
On up to Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky. He did all. I think it's the only series we have where every installment was written by the same person. They weren't all directed by him, but they were all written by him. So I think that's why it has such a strong continuity, except for the 2019 remake. And the TV show also carries on that same continuity. It's really, really good. I'm saving the House of Usher for last.
I recommend the Chucky TV show. I did mention that last month because at the time I was catching up with season 2 ahead of the new season. So I've not seen any of the new season yet, but I can recommend it based on the first 2 seasons. I think if you're a fan of the movie, there's a lot of fun to be had with the TV series. It's going really old school, and it's because I've got the box set and it's one I grew up on, and it's just such a fun casual watch, which is I've been rewatching Beavis and Butthead because I've got the whole set.
Wow.
Just so nostalgic for me. And of course it's the show that gave Daria her start as well.
Yes,
and
I love Daria.
is a big favorite of mine, the show, the character. I've been watching that recently. But yeah, Beavis and Butthead was like just of its era, but so funny, so crude, and just so like a perfect send up of like American culture. And it's just amazing. You have these two like just complete nitwits who are like the most simple guys you could come across, who are just so ridiculously crude, and you love them. You absolutely love them. There is something about how gullible they are, and the way they stumble from situation, and yet they've still got a one-liner at the end of it, and they still seem to bounce back. And they are like endearing sort of slackers, even though they are like, if you met them in real life, you would probably run a mile. And I've also got a soft spot for that era of like hand-drawn animation, and just how simple but how quirky it is. And I mean, it just certain sketches are just like priceless. I mean, one I think of is like the frisbee one, where well, it's not a frisbee, it's a plate, but they're watching like the Olympics round Stuart's house, and that's the kid they always bully. And like they just see like the sort of javelin on the screen, and then the mother brings in a plate of cookies, and they start using the plate as a frisbee to try and like recreate the special, like the Olympics. And it just snowballs from there, where it goes all over the place, and it ends up sort of in amongst traffic. And like one of the drivers thinks it's a UFO. So it's just that kind of thing where it just snowballs, and just such a simple idea of them messing about with this plate, and just the stuff it leads to. And I think it's just so funny and just so simple, but the way the animation is drawn. Because another one that just sort of cracked me up was the one where Butthead is basically like really ill, like he can barely breathe. And just seeing that in animation form with his face going bright red, and just him trying to communicate to Beavis to like get some help. It just makes you laugh, even though like he's practically on death's door. And once again, that just becomes a whole series of unfortunate events, and
I used to
just with a really funny punchline, because Beavis then walks in later and he accidentally steps on Butthead, and that solves the problem because the thing comes out. But then Beavis, it ends up getting inside Beavis, and then that's like the whole punchline. So yeah.
I used to enjoy their reactions to music videos when they would watch the music videos and then they would comment on what they're seeing on the music videos. There's another spinoff from Beavis and Butthead. It was King of the Hill, because Hank Hill was their neighbor. That was always they were always annoying him.
Yeah. And Mike Judge has said that's based on someone he knew from his childhood. There's just so many versions of people who he came across. And
Idiocracy, it takes place in the future where the world is just excessively stupid.
Okay.
Was it? Yes, it was Mike Judge. Mike Judge wrote and directed Idiocracy. You have to check out. He even predicted the Crocs shoes. He even predicted it's a dystopian future where the #1 TV show is Ouch My Balls. And I mean, yeah, you got to watch it. It's very, very relevant. I mentioned What We Do in the Shadows. That's my favorite modern TV show. It is like every episode is a hit. I just love it so much. The comedy is perfect. I love all the different vampire tropes. It's like a show written for horror fans. And not all the jokes are vampire centered. There's other horror tropes that get introduced in the show. But if you enjoy it so much more if you're a fan of horror movies, because there's so many little jokes that are very specific to different genre horror movies that it's great.
Yeah, it's great. I'm actually going to mention it next month because it's something I'm starting to rewatch on, and I'm going to finish with watching the new season, but we've had season 5. But yeah, I love that show. So
and my favorite character is Laszlo.
He's
and his pronunciation of things like New York City.
Yeah, every time he opens his mouth, it's gold, pretty much. But
because I think he's supposed to be from a very certain specific time period in England. I think he's supposed to be from like the 1890s of England. So the way he says things.
And his swearing is just so entertaining.
Oh yes.
But yeah, I highly recommend that.
I quote him all the time. I'm always like, he'll don't do like this hand, or perhaps fuck that.
So many quotable lines and so many great songs as well from Laszlo. It's wonderful. Okay, that's cool. So I've also been watching The Fugitive TV show from the 60s. And this was one that's very influential, obviously. It was a very throwback style show where there obviously is a main sort of arc which doesn't get resolved to the very end. And you've got a lot of episodes, but also it is very case of the week because you've got this character who appears in a different town each week and assumes a new identity. And there's almost like a puzzle for him to solve at the same time as he's trying to find the one-armed man who was responsible for killing his wife, but he was the one he was framed for doing that, and he essentially got arrested for it, so he's now on the run because of it. And it's one of those, like, it's very well directed. It's very much a show of its time. You get some great guest stars like Robert Duvall. A very early Robert Duvall appears in one of the early episodes. The pilot is very strong. I've watched the pilot a few times now, but I'm only a few episodes in, so I can't really say much more about how good the quality is as you go on. But yeah, it is fun watching some old school TV from that era and the way it looks, and like it looks all very noir and gritty. And obviously it's going to be one of those where some episodes are stronger than others. It's weird watching a TV show from that time because of like the product placement that they just force into it. So it's like in the first episode you get some egregious. He uses a certain hairspray as part of his cover, and it will just like highlight that, just like linger on that for like way longer than it would have done. And you actually get characters mentioning the brand in like dialogue. So it's a real like throwback to that sort of time watching it now. But yeah, definitely worth a look, if you've never seen any of The Fugitive. And obviously Lynch took the one-arm man name later on for Twin Peaks, so you can tell he was definitely influenced by that era of TV.
You mentioning that reminded me that I did catch a couple first episodes of some older shows. I was spurred on by this show called Poker Face, which stars Natasha Lyonne.
That's good.
Is a very, very good mystery whodunit of the week type show. And when I finished the series, I was reading about the inspirations for the series. And one of them was Columbo. So I went back and watched some old episodes of Columbo and also Murder, She Wrote. And
nice.
It's very much Poker Face as if you combined Columbo with Murder, She Wrote, because Natasha Lyonne's character is similar to Murder, She Wrote in that in Murder, She Wrote, she goes to different places in the United States and sometimes in the UK to solve cases. And in Poker Face, she's constantly traveling. She's in different parts of the United States, which is great because it's one of the shows that really showcases the country very well, because in the US, we have so many climates. We have everything from desert to frozen tundra to tropical, and it really showcases all these different areas in the United States and different cultures there. So I really like that about the show. But the way she speaks and the way this show is set up is more like Columbo. The way she asks leading questions, she's very much doing a Columbo impersonation. And then also the way the show is set up to where you see the murder first, and then you see how she ends up solving the murder. It's very
that is
non-linear, I guess. And Columbo was that way. I didn't know that Columbo, the series, which starts in the 60s and then goes through the 70s up till I think the last episodes might have been in the early 80s. But that series is the same thing where they show you the murder first and then they show you how Columbo is solving the murder. But I definitely recommend watching those. If you like Poker Face, go back and watch Columbo. Go back and watch Murder, She Wrote. There's also, I haven't seen the episode yet, but I saw in the listings that there's a crossover episode between Murder, She Wrote and Magnum PI. That was a very interesting thing to find out about. Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked about Poker Face on the channel, but I recommend it a lot.
Yes,
it's a lot
so
of fun.
Good.
It's a great part for Leone. You've got some great guest stars, and definitely a quirky sort of show with a good sort of black humor running through it, but with some really fun case of the week style plots as well. And like you said, it definitely spans the whole region of different regions of the US, which is fun to see. And definitely a little bit of a gem from this year. And you're right, it definitely takes quite a lot from Columbo, but its own spin on it as well. So Poker Face I also recommend. Well, I'm pretty much finished in a way. I'll just round up because for the House of Usher, we're gonna do a review of on the channel, so I'll hold back some of my thoughts, but I can say it's wonderful. I can say
I agree.
It's one of the best shows of the year. It's Flanagan at his very best. You've got a wonderful cast of characters. It's great to see some of his regulars just play like really different versions of themselves. I think you can tell they're having a great time. But then you get like new cast members, like once again Mark Hamill, who's just so perfectly cast. Mary McDonnell, who's a character actress I've enjoyed for a very long time. She's a lot of fun as almost like the real true villain of the show. And I think Bruce Greenwood is absolutely wonderful as well. But the reason it's such a great show, I think, is because it's like this full-on meaty, entertaining satire with these absolutely horrendous, terrible people who are very true to life, and it definitely captures the culture. But it's just written in the sort of way where they're just so compelling to watch. And then once the horror stuff kicks in, you really enjoy seeing them being picked off, one by one in a very creative, entertaining way. So it feels very satisfying in that way. So it's almost Flanagan doing his version of Succession, but like
Yes, that's
mixed with
exactly
this
how I would describe it.
horror style show as well. So you've got the two worlds sort of merging perfectly. And yeah, I think it's one of the best things Flanagan has done. You've got a nice little mystery and mythology in there as well. And yeah, definitely one of the best things I've seen from Flanagan. Great dialogue as well.
Yes, I was going to describe it just as I was going to describe it as Succession with horror.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Edgar Allan Poe references. So if you are familiar with his short stories and novellas, you're going to enjoy the little Easter eggs. But you don't have to be familiar with them to enjoy the show. Like you could have never read Edgar Allan Poe and you would still get the impact of the show because everything is very much explained. Like it's, I shouldn't say explained, it's very much shown. They show you something and you're able to take in that information. Everything isn't, there are some expositionary parts of it, but the dialogue is done so well. It's delivered so strongly that you don't mind that it's a monologue. Like the few monologues that we get are so good that you just don't mind it. And they do meter it with more exciting scenes, more visceral, exciting, even some gore there. So it's not. It's got something for everybody, I think, that enjoys horror. In my opinion,
I would agree with that. I think it's wonderful, and the way they work in Poe's like language and dialogue is very well done. I also like the way each episode is sort of a version of a Poe story, like it's titled as one of the classic Poe stories. So
yes.
Look out for more of that soon, because me and Rachel will be doing a video for the full season, so you can look for more in-depth thoughts coming. But I'm pretty much done for TV because I am doing reviews of From on the channel, so people can check out my thoughts. But yeah, I finished season 2, so you can go and check out my thoughts. And by reminding you guys, then you can support the channel monetarily at patreon.com/boardnow. So that's just for $1 a month. You can get a bunch of bonuses, including movie, TV commentaries, early access to reviews, normally a day or even a week before they go live on YouTube. And you can also get some special discussion type videos on there as well. So that's, again, patreon.com/boardnow if you want to support the channel monetarily. And I'm going to give Lady Shasha a chance to promote her channel before we finish. And I'm just going to put your details on screen now.
Oh, thank you so much.
It. So if you want to give your
just recently I did a live stream on Halloween night, also talking about horror television. I got a little bit more into the Fall of the House of Usher, but we also talked about some retro television. We got to talk about Tales from the Crypt and Tales from the Dark Side. We watched a short part of a Tales from the Dark Side episode and reacted to that. And we also reacted to Nightmare on Elm Street fan-made film. That's only about 30 minutes long. So that was my last live stream. Just recently, as you see behind me there, this is the wig for the last cosplay review I did, which was for Witchboard. And I tried to make the hair as teased out as Tawny Kitane's was in Witchboard. Recently, I also did a cosplay review for Scream, Blackula Scream. And I went back to the 90s and gave you a 90s look for Axum, which some have said is the worst horror movie ever. It is not the worst horror movie ever, but it is the most 90s horror movie ever. It's very much a time capsule. I do want to remind everyone that Cabin in the Woods Film Festival will be returning August of 2024. It will also still be in Seattle, Washington, and Crystal and I are working very diligently on it. Right now, we are accepting submissions for short films. The maximum length is 30 minutes. So you can go to cabininthewoodsfilmfest.com for more information on that. Do I have anything else? Oh, I should tell you more about the Cabin in the Woods Film Festival. It is a hybrid festival in that there is one section that you can actually go to the festival at a cabin in the woods. You can purchase a ticket to be in the cabin and screen the movies in the cabin in Seattle, Washington, It's a very unique experience. I call it more of a horror retreat because in addition to screening the movies, there'll be different activities there. It's all inclusive. Your food's provided. The passes to see the movies provided, snacks provided. It's all inclusive. Second part of that, say you don't want to go to a cabin. You are bougie like me. I'm not a cabin person. I will try to go to the cabin, but I'm not a cabin or website person. You can attend in the theater. Just an all-day, 2-day event in August 2023, and you can just come to the theater. Also, all-inclusive. When you buy your ticket for the film festival, it includes your food, your snacks. If you get VIP, you'll also have swag bags. And then there's a third part of it. Say you don't feel like leaving your house. You want to be comfortable on your sofa. You can go to the film festival virtually. And this is international. Doesn't matter what country you're in. You can come to the film festival, and it's interactive because the filmmakers enjoy seeing your reactions to the films. During the film festival, we have a message board that's running, and all you have to do is tweet with the hashtag as you're watching the short films, and it'll come up on our message board, and everyone will be able to see what you're saying. And there will also be breaks where we have hosts in between the films, so you have time to go to the bathroom and all that. And the hosts interact with the audience like a live stream, like how Keith and I are talking to you right now. And there's games, there's trivia. We have a virtual escape room. It's very interactive. So you get a good sense of community. For more information, better than what I was able to say off the top of my head, because I'm not the best, I'm not the best commercial person. Go to cabininthewoods.com for more information. Cabininthewoodsfilmfestival.com. Sorry.
No problem. Yes. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lady Shasha. We'll round up now, but I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like and subscribe as always. Go and support Lady Shasha's stuff, which she just plugged, and it's on the screen. And also let us know what you've been watching and comment on our picks. But thanks for watching. There will be another episode coming soon of this for November, and that'll be me and my regular co-host Rachel doing that one. And we're planning on doing a live stream for that one, so look out for that coming soon. But thank you again, Lady Shasha. We'll have you back on pretty soon to do a similar sort of thing. But thank you, everybody. Take care. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.